All right, we're live. It's the first episode of The Mantle. I have with me Michael McIsaac. Thank you again, man, for doing this.
My pleasure.
I really appreciate it.
Yep.
Michael or Mike? What do you prefer?
Whatever you prefer.
All right, Michael McIsaac is a kinesiologist and a nutritionist focusing on strengthening individuals recovering from car accidents. He also helps people manage metabolic syndrome and gut health. He loves talking about poop. That's your words?
Yes, they are.
He has 2 graduate degrees, one in kinesiology, concentrating in post-rehab, and the other in human nutrition, concentrating in clinical nutrition. An avid snowboarder, I didn't know that about you.
Yeah.
And has a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. That's awesome.
Thanks.
So where did you grow up?
Corner Brook. Just outside of Corner Brook. Probably like 10 minutes.
Okay.
It's a little town called Mount Moriah. Yeah.
Is that where you picked up snowboarding?
No, that's actually embarrassing. I never picked up snowboarding until I was out here. Like, I left in 2001, and I think for here to come to St. John's to finish school, and I think like in 2012, I picked up snowboarding. So I was long out of Corner Brook. Never touched it. Totally embarrassing. Right there, not interested. But it's one of those things when you leave, you start looking back on, you start missing it, but you don't care about it when it's there. But yeah.
So do you travel back to Marble and hit the slopes out there?
I do, as much as I could between, I said, when did I say, 2012, 2014 I started? Something like that, I can't remember.
Yeah, I think 2012.
Yeah, it's something like that. And I'd go back and forth when I could. Usually it was probably 1 or 2 times, because it's kind of tricky when you're working and you're in school, right? But we hit up a couple other spots too, like Mont Tremblant.
Wow.
Oh my God, that was amazing. Favorite hill. I'm sure like all the people that like are experts at this are like, Mike, there's other hills. It was just nice. It was just a nice setup, right? BC was nice. I would love to go to Switzerland, but everyone wants to go to Switzerland to hit it, right? But I haven't done it since 2017 because I had knee surgery.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
What happened?
I zigged when I should have zagged in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I got locked down, and I didn't know how to get out of it. So now I know that you're supposed to bring your heel to your ass, right, and then get out of it. I kept my legs straight, and if you could imagine, I was twisting to try to get out of it, and that's like your leg doesn't like torsion. It doesn't like this. It loves this because it's a hinge joint, right? But it really doesn't like a whole lot of that, so I gave it a whole lot of that. And I sort of needed 1.5 years to rehab. And then COVID struck and all that stuff, and the hills were closed and blah, blah, blah. But I'm hoping to get back this winter. That was a really, really, really long answer to a question about snowboarding.
No, it's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like it. So you chose 2 sports that are renowned for injuries.
Yeah, I guess I like running towards the bullets. Yeah.
So how did you end up getting interested in kinesiology and nutrition?
I think it started when basically my sister called me fat. I think she called me like the Pillsbury Doughboy as a joke or something, and I'm like, I'll show you, right? But it started. I think there was like a course in grade 10, 11, or 12 at Regina. I can't remember, but it was like a careers course, something like that. And I remember just like doing a pile of searches, and then I stumbled across this kinesiology thing. Never heard of it before. But, it was about exercise and performance enhancement and studying anatomy and biomechanics. I'm like, oh my God, this sounds amazing. So I hit Sir Wilfrid Grenfell after I graduated in 99. And I pretty much just took all the electives that I knew I needed before I decided to apply to kin at MUN. It kind of just made sense. I just wanted to get all of the electives out of the way so I could just focus on kin courses. I also got to save money because I could stay home in Corner Brook. So then I think it was like 3 years out in St. John's, I think. And I finished up. Yeah.
After school, what did you get into?
I think I just worked at a pile of different gyms. The Ac Arena. That's where I met. Is that where I met you?
It was, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was a lifeguard back then.
Back in the day, my God. Yeah, in the field house. Worked in the strength and conditioning center. Remember that spot?
I do.
Yeah.
You actually taught me a lot about the tricep pull down.
I did.
And how to focus. Yeah. You said
triceps.
with the rope, you said to pull it
Oh,
out.
yeah?
Yeah.
Really? Oh
Yeah.
my god. Oh my god.
It worked at the time. I felt great.
Bodybuilding. Oh my god, that's all I knew back then. Oh god, I had one tool on my Batman belt.
Were you big into bodybuilding before kinesiology, or did it kind of go hand in
Yeah, I
hand?
forgot to say that. Yeah, my uncle. Well, that goes back to, my sister kind of jokingly said that, right? But at the same time, my uncle Doug was huge into bodybuilding. Man, and he was sitting down like, he basically was self-educated, which I was fascinated by, right? Like, he was interested enough to find like old nursing books that his brother had, because he did nursing, right?
Wow.
And he was just trying to suck up as much as he could on anatomy and mechanics and some basic nutrition. I was looking at him going, man, you've got this together, right? And so he started teaching me a few things, this and that. And he introduced me to Mike Mentzer, which is this concept of heavy-duty training. Some things make sense. Some things have been proven wrong, right? But it was like a little foray, a little beginning. And it just grew from there. And then I got into bodybuilding for from 15 to 21 or 22, something like that. A long time. Yeah.
I think it's great for especially as like a segue from being a kid.
Yeah.
You get into bodybuilding, you start to care about what you eat. You start to want to be active.
It's hard. Like I don't really think that the training protocols in bodybuilding are necessarily good for performance enhancement as it relates to athletics. But it does build muscle, and it does build strength, and it does really, really teach you, or forces you, if you want to get good at it, to admit you have to be disciplined. You absolutely have to be disciplined. You have to have a schedule, and you have to stick to it, because every little thing that you do matters. And I think that actually taught me a lot and got me ready for school. Because if I could focus that hard every day on the things that I had to do as it related to bodybuilding, and back at the time, like I took those skill sets and I just transferred them to how I studied.
That's great.
Yeah.
I guess discipline and showing up every day even when you don't want to.
Yeah, it's important to do difficult things. That's not my quote. That's Joe Rogan's. But it's true. You need to push yourself a little bit. I don't think that humans are meant to sit around. I know we're not meant to sit around. We decay if we do, right? Physically and spiritually. We need challenge. We absolutely do. I don't even care what it is, but everybody needs to do something.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd definitely like to come back to that.
Let's do it.
So how far did you go in bodybuilding?
I never competed or anything like that, but I just tried to push my system as far as I could go. And I learned a lot about that too. Number one, you cannot go 100% all the time, because things like bronchitis and colds, and neurological fatigue and poor sleep can happen. And then if you're really, really stubborn, you ignore all those things and you keep doing it. Right? Right? But yeah. You definitely learn a lot by making mistakes. So that certainly happened. I learned a lot about how to modulate, frequency of your training, the intensity, and I learned a lot about the value of recovery and what that means. So much that now it's part of my I guess ethos in my current company. Yeah.
So what was your transition from bodybuilding into, I guess, more functional fitness? Is that fair to say?
It happened around, I think it happened around 2009. Around 2009 or so. I just started reaching out to different things, and continuing education effectively led me out of it into more functional strength training, if you want to call it that. There's a brilliant strength coach down in Boston. His name is Mike Boyle, and he's done it all. And there are physiotherapists down there. One in particular, Gray Cook, and his business partner Lee Burton. They've been running a program that teaches exercise professionals and healthcare professionals at large how to assess the body in a way that's functional. And learning how to assess a person effectively, and learning how to develop programs that improved qualities other than just how nice your muscles look. It changed everything. It changed how I thought. It changed about how much more important it is to look beyond just aesthetics and to consider function and reduction of musculoskeletal injury and performance enhancement at large. That's what happened at around 2009, and it's been that way ever since.
So what does your typical workout consist of?
It's broken down into sections. The first thing that is always done is soft tissue work, aka self-massage or instrument-assisted self-massage. Getting tissues loose that are tight. Trying to get blood flow into the regions that require it. Getting joints opened up that are restricted. Following that is what you might call, and I consider that a warm-up, all that stuff I just said. The second phase of that warm-up is then doing something called correctives. So you pick exercises that target things that are restricted on you, which would have been found from that movement assessment from the FMS that I was telling you about. So, for me, it's keeping the hips loose, and there's stuff to do there, and there's stuff to keep my upper back loose. Because those two areas are going to get stiff with anyone that sits down a lot, and I sure did a lot of that between high school and preschool and junior high and my undergrad, and then 2 more grades. There's a lot of sitting. And then we got into jiu-jitsu, which is more crouching, right? So the upper back and that has to get loose. So that's really the second phase, just doing things to loosen up joints that are tight. And then the bulk or the meat of the program, it's core stability. I prefer to do it first. I follow that with upper and lower body power, and then I end with strength training. And you can break that down into horizontal pushing, pulling, knee, hip dominant, and all this other weird language. But it all has a purpose. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. There's an algorithm, and it works. And it's not mine. I just learned from greats.
So,
yeah.
I know in bodybuilding,
yeah.
It's, outside the nutrition,
yeah.
you're hitting groups,
yeah,
different days of the week.
That's right.
Is this more? It sounds like it's more, I'll say full body.
It is.
So is it broken up into a different kind of split where you can recover, where you're kind of hitting everything, or is like?
The answer is yes. You're hitting your full body, and generally, depending on how the other activities that you're doing throughout the week too, influences how often you train through the week. Okay. So if you're not really doing a lot of anything else, then you can really get most people to train between 2 and 4 days a week. If you have someone like us that are probably doing jiu-jitsu 3 or 4 days a week, it's kind of like an inverse relationship. Well, if you're doing a lot of other stuff, you do a little less of the stuff in the gym because you only have so much fuel in the tank, right? Both to conduct both of those things, but also like your immune system is taking a beating too. Your immune system just doesn't fight pathogens. It recovers and it helps rebuild tissue, right? Yeah. A lot of people forget that, right? So for me, I usually train 2 or 3 days a week, and I'll do jiu-jitsu 2 to 4. And yes, it's a full body routine to get back to your question. So you're looking, and you're not really thinking about muscles per se. That's more of a bodybuilding thing where you're thinking isolation. And that's really good to make you look good. It does work for that. But you intuitively, in life or in jiu-jitsu, you're not moving like RoboCop. Like, you're not. You're moving in these very highly orchestrated, harmonious motions, aren't you? Right?
Yeah.
And so, in some sense, your training ought to reflect that, because if your neuromuscular system is operating that way when you're in a sport, if that's what we're talking about to prove this point, then the training ought to reflect that. So I don't really think about muscles when I'm training. I think about movement patterns, and then I categorize those patterns. We all have to push, we all have to pull, we all have to lift, and we all need to squat and carry things. And so really whatever muscles are required to do those things, then so be it. But that's effectively what the program looks like. There's pushing, pulling, squatting, and lifting, and there's power production. Because we need those things in life and in sport.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's a bit weird the first time you hear it, especially if you're used to thinking just thinking in terms of muscles and not movement.
Yeah, I'm guilty
It's
of
weird,
it
right?
myself. Yeah.
I get it. I used to be a bodybuilder. I totally understand it.
I find, especially, you mentioned jiu-jitsu, that is basically my cardio. And
It's damn good cardio.
it's great.
Yeah.
There's nothing like it. And
Yeah.
I know I've talked to people in class that do cardio and they run, and they're like, I can't believe how gassed I am, after a 5-minute round.
Yeah.
But I do find, because I'm a meathead at heart and I love pushing weight.
Sure.
So the fibers in my shoulders, if someone stretches me out an armbar fast enough, it hurts for days. It's so tight.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just get ready to say tap as soon as I break my grip. And they start going
saying
back.
tap is vital.
Yeah.
Trust me. Yeah. Trust me about that one.
So back to when you talked about getting into a routine.
Yep.
Something you can do. Bodybuilding was kind of began that for you into your education. You mentioned about your mental health and your spiritual well-being.
Yep.
Is spirituality something that you that's important to you, and what does that mean to you?
I don't even know how I can put it in words. Well, I don't look. The more I studied science, just the more I'm blown away by a single atom. For God's sakes, like how is it spinning there all by itself? It's not like someone pushing it, and the electron just kind of goes around and then stops again. And that's just one little atom. And then you've got countless trillions of them. It's not even an appropriate number that make our universe. And everything is working together perfectly. It's very difficult for me to consider that to be some kind of mistake, personally. Can't prove it. So, I don't know, maybe part of spirituality for me is just a deep gratitude for my existence. And I think gratitude is important to keep and have every day. I was just talking about this with a client yesterday who has depression, and part of his therapy is trying to remind himself every day of things that he appreciates. If that's some kind of answer. Yeah. I don't subscribe to any particular religion, but I guess that's what it is to me. Maybe the universe is God, if you want to say that and put that word on it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's me personally, I do believe that spirituality is such a personal thing.
Yeah.
That so many people can have their own beliefs. I go, myself and my family, we go to a Christian church, and I find it great. All the people are very friendly, and there's a lot of community there, which I really enjoy.
Totally.
But I don't subscribe to what they all believe in the exact same way.
Yeah.
Because it is personal to me, and I would never talk about it to them because
it's not required.
Exactly.
Because it's yours.
I can enjoy it. I can be there. They got great coffee.
Yeah.
It's
yeah. Like I don't know. Like I'm looking at you and you're talking to me. Like I think we're more than just the sum of our parts, aren't we?
Oh, absolutely.
Like it's hard for me to look from a very cold, objective Spock-like point of view and say, yes, this was just all a random mistake that came from entropy in the universe. I can't process it that way. It seems more sacred than that.
Yeah, not to get in a tangent about myself with this.
I don't mind. Let's do it. Let's go.
But for me, so I grew up a Catholic.
Me too.
And okay, so you know what it's like. It's very, you're a sinner.
Yeah.
And it's down your throat.
What?
And I was taught by nuns.
I didn't do anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they're like, you're bad.
Yeah, I'm just awful, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, I guess.
So by the time I graduated high school, I was over it.
Yeah,
and I just
think a lot of
dropped
us were.
religion completely. Yes, 100%.
Yeah.
I have a lot of friends that are in the same boat as us.
Yeah.
And it's not until a few years ago that things just started to kind of beyond coincidence and just the way I felt, especially the push and the pull. And, when you're doing nice things and you're loving people and doing loving things, it feels good. But if you're feeling spite or anger, it feels bad, And it's like that positive and negative energy also makes me feel super small. So it's like, I'm just one, I'll say, electron in the mix,
Yeah.
and it's, I just,
I like
so
it.
coming back to religion in
Yep.
a way on my own terms has been good, and it kind of keeps me kind of solidified, more so than being a lost soul. And I find you see a lot, especially men that are kind of lost. And that brings me to, I've been reading your articles over the last week.
Yeah.
And there are some,
My condolences.
they're very in-depth, and they're very impressive. And you
Yeah.
pump out so many, and I mean, I was very impressed. Even looking through your LinkedIn feed and just seeing them all come up. Gut health, but the one that interests me the most is the link between mental health and physical fitness and nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
Can you let me know more about that, or speak about the link in between what you eat, working out, and the spike in depression? It seems like a lot of anxiety, and I've spoken to a couple of friends of mine, one of them in particular, and he suffers heavily from depression and anxiety, but he's sedentary. And if he's acting, or if he feels strange, he's like, oh, they changed the dosage of the pill I'm on. And I'm like, okay. But he doesn't work out, and he doesn't eat right. And he's, again, sedentary.
Yeah. Well, we'll start with medications. I think there can be a time and place for those, and I'm not a medical doctor, so it's not my place to determine when or how. But I can appreciate that there is a time and place, right? But I would like to think that those particular interventions are probably going to be more efficacious if they're placed on a sound foundation of healthy living. Frankly, we know that poor sleep, chronic poor sleep, can have deleterious physiological effects. It messes with your blood sugar. Just to keep it simple, you deprive people of sleep long enough, and I'm talking one night, and the next day their blood sugars are those of a diabetic.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's nasty. That's just one little example, right? You could imagine that poor or inadequate sleep prolonged, it's going to have a negative effect on your ability to focus, to be able to engage, to be able to think. It can induce and worsen depression, right? And it can even drive dementia, which makes sense, right? Because if you totally sleep deprive someone long enough, if you're crazy, you can kill them. That's just sleep, which I would put under the category of recovery. I kind of alluded to a philosophy that I have. I believe in the amalgamation of exercise, nutrition, and recovery. You need all three, right? So that's one small example of recovery. So yeah, it can absolutely contribute to and or worsen depression. We know that exercise is a very potent, or has very potent antidepressive qualities. It can affect it can affect dopamine and serotonin favorably, right? So like those substances that help regulate and stabilize mood and your reward system to do things, it can regulate those things. And it's free. You just stand up and you walk outside. It doesn't have to be fancy. You just have to start. And then we get on to I'm just briefly touching these, then we get on to the topics of nutrition. I mean, if you have a lot of processed foods, things that have a lot of sugar and seed oils and omega-6 fatty acids and all these other boring words, they can drive inflammation. They can dysregulate blood sugars. And they can mess with your ability to focus and your ability to feel good. Because, a lot of diseases, at minimum, are connected to high rates of inflammation in your system, otherwise known as a very overactive immune system, pretty much. attacking itself. So they all matter, right? They all matter.
When people talk about inflammation, that's something that's said a lot.
Yeah.
You know, get a cold plunge, it produces inflammation. Certain foods increase inflammation.
Yeah.
What is that inflammation?
Inflammation is basically a response of your white blood cells addressing something in your body. So some inflammation is really good. Okay. If you have a pathogen in your system, let's say you have a virus of some kind, a cold, there are different white blood cells that are part of your immune system that, and it breaks down into innate and adaptive, but that's just kind of really boring. Let's just keep this simple. There are cells that sniff out, target, and destroy that pathogen. Part of that process, or the act of it doing that, is what we call inflammation, right? There's increased blood flow to an area. There's increased swelling to an area. There's increased white blood cells that we're talking about, which is your immune system. So there's a time and a place for that. The problem, though, is when you have too much inflammation too long. So let's simplify. Let's say you're bleeding, and I get a hot metal prod. Okay, that's the immune system. I come in and I sear it, and I stop the bleeding. Boom, the immune system did its job, correct? But what if I keep it there, and I keep turning it, and I just leave it there, and it stays there, and it stays there, and it goes deeper? I think we can both agree then it's too much of a good thing, right? And now it can become a problem. Well, that's chronic inflammation, a very simplified version of chronic inflammation. So there's always this balance, like everything else, right? Not too much, not too little, just enough. Unfortunately, things like unpredictable or inconsistent sleep and eating a lot of foods that are junk food and sitting around a lot can really make that worse, a lot worse.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Okay. I've never had inflammation explained to me in a way that I could digest.
Yeah, and again, for all of the doctors and immunologists that might be listening, yes, I understand it's very simple, but you got to keep it simple to get some basic points across.
Especially for myself. So I appreciate that.
All of us. All of us.
So, say, and I'm sure we've all run into people, but I actually talked to someone recently, and he has gained a lot of weight. Mm-hmm. He's got young kids, and he's like, I don't know where to go. And a lot of people, it's daunting to start working out and eating right. Mm-hmm. What would you recommend for somebody to get started?
Yeah, I'd probably go for sleep first. And I've written a lot about sleep, recovery. Basically, I'm talking about recovery here, right? Mm-hmm. One of my big three. I'd start with that. I'd try to get sleep hygiene down, get it down. You mess with sleep, everything else falls apart, all of it. I really think it's the tip of the iceberg, consistent sleep. So, I mean, there are very simple protocols that you can get people going, and I would like to defer to Dr. Matt Walker for your listeners. It's Matthew Walker, I believe. He's a sleep researcher. He's excellent. He's been on Joe Rogan's podcast. He's been on Andrew Huberman's podcast. He really knows his stuff here. But really, if we could get people at least going to sleep at the same time every night, and making sure that they go to bed at a time so they have the opportunity for 8 hours of sleep. Not that they will get it right away, but that they do that. Because if you go to bed really, really late and you get up really, really early, you have no opportunity to get 8 hours. So I'd start there. There's other stuff you can do. You can block out blue light, which is a particular frequency that comes from LED overhead lights and from our smart devices and flat screens. Blue light is in the sun. It's a frequency found in the sun. And effectively, it inhibits the release of melatonin. from your brain. Melatonin, of course, creates sleepiness. So putting on amber-colored glasses actually can help filter out that blue light so you can get that pressure, that sleepiness. That's another little hack, if we want to call it that. I can't stand that term, but it is. Right?
Yeah.
Other stuff. Make sure that you're not drinking too much water maybe 3 hours or 4 hours before bed, and that your last meal is at least 3 or 4 hours before bed, so you're not full. Right? Little things like that. Maybe a little bit of magnesium if you'd like, 200 milligrams, or CBD oil. Talk to your medical doctor. Right? So those kinds of things. That would be one. We could just start there, and we could do that for a month or more. Right? The big thing when you're trying to help people that need a lot of things done to get them healthy is you've got to start in little chunks. Psychologically, it gives them a sense of success. It helps develop a habit, and they can continue to do it over and over and over before you ask them to do another behavioral change. Slow and steady, right? Slow and steady is the answer here. That's my opinion. And then, once they've got that down and they're feeling a little bit better, then maybe we just talk about a little bit of nutrition, right? Maybe. And it doesn't have to be anything terribly complicated. Maybe we just talk about having a little bit more protein at every meal, and then maybe we get on to talking about what protein is and how much. And we don't even talk about all the other stuff we're eating. And I find that works, actually. Because protein, if you have it in the right amounts at every meal, basically anything that had a heartbeat is protein, in my opinion. Okay? Sorry, vegans. But when you have, let's say it's about 1 gram of protein per pound of lean estimated body mass. Okay? If you split that up over however many meals that you tend to eat, let's just say it's 3. Maybe you're 150 pounds lean. Well, it's 50 grams a meal, but what happens if you do that? You get so damn full of the protein, you're less likely to eat all the other stuff that you might tend to eat. And this is, what's the article that I've written on it? I think it's called Protein and Satiety. I think that's what the article's name is. But it's effectively a protein leveraging hypothesis. The idea is that get people really full on protein first, and they're less likely to eat everything else, right? And because protein has so many good things in it anyways. But I mean, it distends the stomach. It stimulates certain hormones that signal to your brain that you're full. And it helps build hormones. It helps build muscle tissue and anything else that needs to be repaired in your system. So there's a lot of good reasons to do it. Maybe you just start there, and you don't even talk about the other stuff, and let them do that for a month or more. And then maybe we talk about exercise. And this is just one approach. And if we get to exercise, maybe it's just this. Put your shoes on and just go for a 5-minute walk. Put it on. Put it on 5 minutes. Right? Maybe it's 2.5 or 3 minutes. Put your stopwatch on, boom, you hear it go off, turn around and come back. And maybe you just start there, especially if someone has a few pounds on. It gives them a little taste of success. It reminds them that this does not have to be crazy. We don't have to be going from 0 to 100. And you're just building habits over time. I find these work. I have found that when you try to change too many things too fast, it's overburdening, and then you only deepen their sense of failure, which they already have.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Little wins in everything.
Yes. Sorry if that was a large diatribe, but
oh no,
I wanted to adequately answer.
I'm here to listen. No, that does make a lot of sense. There's a lot to touch on there.
Yeah.
Let's take a short break.
Sure.
And we'll be right back. All right, and we're back.
We are.
So you mentioned sleep.
Yep.
And the importance of sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you, man, when my youngest was born, he slept for 4 hours a night for 2 years.
Which meant you slept for 4 hours a night for 2 years.
I remember getting up at 5 in the morning after going to bed at 12:30 or 1 in the morning.
Yep.
And putting on Rambo and a pot of coffee and just holding him
funny.
As we watched, hours and hours of gore. But
yeah, that's pretty good.
But I literally felt insane. Like I felt crazy. And I feel like there was waves of that. Because, like, I've always been, I'll say, normally a friendly person. But I find I can be very curt, you know?
Yeah.
And it does extend out for me anyway, and I'm sure it's the same for everybody. But you know, I could get myself on a schedule and I can get the workout in, and I could eat right, but not having the sleep may be a mess. Something else you mentioned that I found interesting about the protein. A lot of times it seems like, and you mentioned the filling of protein. The comfort foods are never like a steak. No one's like, you know, I'm going to sit down and watch a movie. I'm going to cook up a ribeye. It's always chips and the carbs, you know? And it just...
Whoever did that, whoever went, oh, I had such a stressful day. Where's the tuna? No one does that. No one does that.
Yeah, you can't get bags of chicken chips, you know? It's always the trash. And it's never filling. And it always, you know. But I do like the little win recommendation there.
Matters.
Yeah.
It matters.
I think atomic habits really work. If it's like, you know, you go for a 10-minute walk. But you do it consistently. Doesn't sound like much, but you're winning. You're getting that feeling that you're doing something.
Yeah, you're participating in, you're recognizing that you have agency in your health, control. Right? And that's very empowering.
Awesome. Moving on, for you in your... Actually, let's take a step back here.
Sure.
So you finish off kinesiology.
Yes.
What was the transition period between getting some jobs after kinesiology and then starting your own company? How did that come about?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think I finished in 2004, I think. It's been a long time. It's been a minute. I think, so during the KIN program, when I came out to St. John's, I was working at the Arena and the Field House and the Strength and Conditioning Center, right? And I think I also did a bit of global gym there as well. And then when I finished KIN in 2004, I think I banged around for a little bit more in the gyms. No, I think I worked for a local occupational therapy company. I think it was Fit for Work. And I did that for about a year. And that was actually, like, in all fairness, like, I really learned how to do assessments there and how to write reports effectively. Like, so shout out to them for that, right? And then I think after that, I worked at New Bodies for a while, I think it was like 2006. And this is hilarious. I don't know why, but I actually became a financial planner.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think I did that for a year. I wanted to change. I thought I did. We'll come back to that. And that was during the crash of '08. So great time to get into finance, right? Amazing time. You know, no one wanted to do anything with their money. But I'll tell you what, though, I never knew this, but I always thought that people put their health the closest to their heart. No, they don't. They put their money even closer. And I came to appreciate that in some sense, because if you need money, it's the lifeblood of exchange of services and goods. You need it. And it really taught me a lot, you know. So I learned a lot about insurance, life insurance, mutual funds, and all that stuff. Yep. I think that was IG that I worked at. Met a lot of good people there. Yeah.
Wow.
Shout out to IG. But you know what they also taught me? I know I'm going on a diatribe here, but they reminded me how important it is, the value of building relationships with your clients. It's so true. It's so true. It's so central, making that connection. And I carried that on for ever since. And then after that, I noticed I was missing my original field, and then I got right back in after about a year. I think the crash of '08 also had something to do with that. I think so. And after that, I think I went back to New Bodies again. I think I have this down. It's been a while. And I was working there for about a year or so, a year and a half, and then I struck out on my own. And I think that was around 2009. I started my own business. And it really, I found a niche specifically. And I never looked for it. It fell in my laps. When I was at New Bodies, I was constantly being given referrals for people that were hurt and beat up. I'm like, okay. And literally, that's how that happened. And ever since, I've been working very closely with individuals recovering from car accidents. It's the bread and butter of what I do. And I've been doing that since 2009.
It's definitely important work.
Yeah, working with people that are hurt, it's different.
So, you were at New Bodies.
Yep.
They started to refer you clients.
Yep.
Were you your own entity at that point?
No. I was an employee of New Bodies.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when did you break out and
I think it was sometime in 2009. I think it was like June or July or something like that in 2009. I started on my own and I just went for it. Yeah, I just went for it back then. And I mean, my company name had different names back and forth as I was learning things about marketing. Shout out Bill Jackman of Brand Command for helping straightening me out on that. Yeah. Having a name with like friggin' 3 or 4 words in it is not a good idea. Make it simple, right? Make an impact.
it's that staying power?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep it simple. But yeah, it's been that ever since, really. I'd say almost 100% of our new referrals are folks that have been hurt in some capacity. A lot of them are from car accidents, but not always. And then you have some personal training clients and some folks that need some help with nutrition. That was interesting too. The whole reason I went back to school to do nutrition is because I sucked at it. Basically. I couldn't do it. I'm like, what do you mean you can't make people just sweat all their calories off? That's what I thought you could do. I was like, oh, really? You can't? Yeah, and then I had this like moment where I'm like, how much effort does it take to burn 1,000 calories in the gym? And it's a lot. And how much effort does it take to eat 1,000 calories? You won't break one bead of sweat.
No,
and then when I realized that, I'm like, oh my God, I need to study nutrition to get better at this. Yep.
It's a real shame how much fun it is to eat at 1,000 calories.
Oh, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
So,
yeah. Hope I answered your question.
Absolutely. No, thank you for that. So, with your clients,
Mm-hmm.
you give them nutritional advice as well as
Yep.
a workout plan and.
Yep.
Okay.
They're all separate services. You can pay for them separately, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they know the options are there if they want it. They always know. I always let them know. I don't force it, but if they're interested, they know that I'm there to help. And that way, they feel a lot more comfortable. Yeah, I don't do the hard sales stuff. I'm not that guy.
No.
I'm not that guy.
No.
No.
Financial planner, you were almost that guy. But,
yeah, it taught me a lot, man. It did teach me a lot. It really did, yeah.
So what was that like going from having jobs to having your own business?
I liked it. I just felt that I could make more money, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think a lot of people have trouble saying that. But the other part of it is I just felt I could do it a little better. And I don't mean that I don't mean to make any disparaging comments about any place that I work. They all taught me valuable things. I'm just saying that specifically in a couple of small things I felt I could do it better, right? And I found it exciting. I didn't find it scary. I found it stimulating. It's nice. It's nice. Remember that thing I said about having agency?
Yeah.
Well, that's just another manifestation of that. It's not a requirement for everybody, but I found it was a requirement for me. Yeah. Yep.
It is definitely a characteristic of certain people.
Yeah.
Especially if, and it sounds like you had a vision and you get to carry it out.
Yeah.
Your way.
Mm-hmm.
Some people I know, they're in a stable job and their life is not their career, it's their hobbies or things outside of that. But then and I am also one of those people where I find it draining to work for other people's vision and not pushing my own. So, yeah. And if profit comes from that, that's fantastic.
It's definitely
it's definitely not a bad word.
No, not at all.
Yeah. But and that's why people work. It's not because they love it. Some people probably do, but
like,
you have to eat.
Ideally, if you could do something that you love, whether it's on your own or for someone else, if you share their vision, oh my God, that's magical. Do it. Do it. It's just, I have fun. Like, I like this stuff, right? Like, it's nice to, have a question that you don't have an answer to specifically. That's the best, is when you don't know the answer, because then you got to go off and learn and get smarter. That's half the reason I wrote all those articles, because I didn't know, and I wanted to know.
It's brilliant.
So then, I get an education, and so do my clients. We both learn together, right? And I don't mind doing the heavy lifting. It's good for me. It's good for my head, right? Again, focus, having a purpose, a mission, yeah.
So you started this entrepreneurship around 2009?
Yeah.
And I believe at this point you have one employee?
It was just me, and I think within a couple of years I needed someone else. I needed to have another colleague work for me, yeah.
How do you find the leadership role?
I don't mind it. I don't mind it. It's if you really believe in what you're doing, it's very easy to help other people. It's also really good to have mentors, and I did. Paul Fitzgerald was my supervisor at the 𝐸𝐴, and when I was at New Bodies, he was also my supervisor, manager. And God bless his heart, man, he taught me so much. He taught me a lot about leadership and about coaching people and about conflict resolution and about how to work with people and not see the problem that they have if they do, but to see the person first who happens to have a challenge, whether that's a coworker or your client. He always reminded me to acknowledge the dignity of the person first, and to always keep that there. In fact, this is I love that man. He's a really good guy. I hope he hears this. But he, one time, years ago, I had a conflict with a coworker at New Bodies. It was nothing major. But he kind of sat us down and arbitrated it. And the way that he did that, like, he was like Captain Picard on PCP. Like, he was the ultimate diplomat. Like, he made us feel dignified. He made us feel safe. We got to the problem. We resolved it. It blew my mind. Here's something else, too. He mentioned there was a conflict resolution course at MUN that you could take. Do you know he went with me to that?
Really?
Yeah. Imagine that. He
Wow.
went with me. He didn't have to do that. That's the kind of guy he is. It's very important to find mentors if you can.
Absolutely.
Right? It really is. And he is a huge mentor. I wouldn't be where I am today without him. And that's a fact.
So you guys met at New Bodies in the 𝐸𝐴?
Yeah, it was at the 𝐸𝐴 in 2000. I think I came out from Cornerbrook in 2000, I think. Or, I can't remember, 2000, 2001. And I got a job at the 𝐸𝐴. He was a supervisor there. And at some point, man, we just started like grabbing coffees and talking shop. And then when he was at New Bodies, it was the same thing. We were working out together 5 in the morning. I was meeting him 5 in the morning. Like, I am not saying no to that man. Like, if he says, hey, do you want to work out? I'm like, yes, sir. Right? I am not saying no. I was there. Damn, come hell or high water, I was there. Right? We did that for years. Years.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you find that now in your leadership role that you're approaching mentorship for your employee? Or do you think that's something down the road? Does that interest you?
Explain it further. What do you mean?
So is your employee following your vision, or are you paying forward the things that Greg taught you
Yeah, I do.
to him.
Yeah, 100%. I try my best. Right? I mean, we would have, for several years at the beginning, because Aaron is still with me. His name is Aaron Russell. Great guy. Great guy. He's been with me for like 5 or 6 years now. Like, it's incredible.
That's great.
Very receptive young man. Like, a great listener. Very empathetic. He meets all the clients where they are. But he, I mean, we would meet every Friday for years and go over things to just make things run better, right? And it's constant, or for several years it was near constant coaching too, right? Because we'd always be around each other when we were training our clients, and and then we could sit down afterwards and say, okay, that was cool. What do you think about this? And then tweak it. And he's helping me too, right? It goes both ways. Like we do a lot of videos for the website, and he's really good at catching that right angle, like the perfect angle to get that thing. And he knows I have terrible OCD, so he's like, you're not going to like that one. We got to do it over. I won't even have to look at it. He knows, right? I'm like, oh my God, okay. Yeah. But yeah, it's, I try to get back as much as I can. For years, I would go to MUN, and for 3 or 4 days, and they were like hour-and-a-half lectures long, and it was like it was a biomechanics course, I think, by Dr. Jeanette Byrne. Shout out to Dr. Jeanette Byrne. She's amazing. Never had the pleasure of having her as a prof when I went through. It's too bad. She's really cool and very ahead of her time. But she was totally open to us coming in and teaching. What do you guys do to assess a client? Because kin is extremely good, okay? It's really like, bottom line, we make people bigger, faster, stronger. We improve performance. That's what we do, right? And it's a good thing. And yes, we improve health markers as well. But you need to know where to start people, though. You just can't give them a pile of stuff and have them do it. Like, what's their medical history? Do they have any injuries? If you know there are certain exercises that are good, and there's a lot of science behind them, but do they have the stuff? Do they have the mobility in the right joints? Are the right things firing that they can do those things that you want them to do? And so she really appreciated that we do need to screen movements and joints and patterns, and that's what I would come in and do. For several years, we would go in and just kind of teach them these things and say, hey, look, keep this in mind as you're making your way through. Right? Okay. She seemed to really appreciate that. And she totally supported my awful videos with lightsabers that were part of the presentation. Got to a point where she knew the lightsaber fight was coming, and she would dim the lights.
That's amazing.
Oh, she's really cool. Yeah.
Sounds like you met some important people along the way.
Yeah, I think so.
Moving forward, one of the things that impressed me about you was your commitment to jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
And where we are, it seems like it's picking up, but it's never really been as mainstream as bigger places. Mm-hmm. What brought you to jiu-jitsu?
It was Jerome Brennan. He was a personal trainer at the Arena. I don't know if you remember him. He and his brother, they started in Kempo, but then they started getting into grappling and jiu-jitsu. And through the jigs and the reels, I found out that he was doing it, and it was like back in like my first or second year at MUN. And I found out that he was doing it. I was like, man, I didn't know what it was. I wasn't watching UFC. Not really. I didn't know anything, but I was like, oh man, that looks cool. And so I went in there, and that's where it started. And he's a damn fine instructor. He's a really good guy. And like, he gave me a foundation. Like, he really like drove us hard in all the best sense of that word. Like, he really, really got our conditioning up to a place where we would just keep going and going and going, and we wouldn't stop. And we knew how to take pain and give it and just keep going. Like, he's really good for that. But that's where it started. And then I got away from that for a while because I got really busy with work and everything else for many, many years. And then around, I think it was 2011, I caught wind that jiu-jitsu was being offered somewhere else. At the time, I don't think Jerome was doing it at that point. I could be wrong, but I found out about Republic basically, and they were over in the combat room at MUN before it was changed into a lecture hall today. And 2011 is when I started there, and I've pretty much been doing it ever since. Yeah.
A lot of times when you hear people have a big transformation, and it's usually after somebody hits some kind of mental, physical, or just a life rock bottom.
Yeah.
It seems to now be part of the equation to get themselves better. Usually it's like they start eating right, working out, and doing jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
What do you think about jiu-jitsu is so important to that transition for people, or that equation?
It can be. I think, in all fairness, to be totally objective, I think taking on anything that's challenging is good for you. I think in our case, it just happens to be jiu-jitsu, right? But broadly speaking, I think if we look at it as a sport, it's teaching you how to, there's a sociologist, I think it was Dr. Wheeler back in one, and I remember him saying something like, sport is a microcosm of society. I think that's what he said. I hope I got that right, Doc Wheeler. And he said, and I'm like, man, what do you mean? It's because you learn how to win, you learn how to fail, you learn how to fall on your face, you learn how to get back up, and you learn to work with other people. And I was never in sports as a kid, see. Jiu-jitsu was the first sport I was ever in. And I couldn't believe it. I'm like, that makes a lot of sense. So maybe the reason that jiu-jitsu can be important for people is it's teaching them to deal with struggle. It's teaching them to fall on their face and get back up, that hopefully that those things, because it's a safe environment to win and lose, right? That hopefully though they can carry that into their real life in other parts of their life. Maybe that's why it's important. And also too, like when you're about to have a joint blown apart or being choked out, it probably gives you a deep sense of gratitude of being able to tap and get out of that. And it makes you really respect and learn how to trust and admire the people that let it go. Makes you, I think. I remember Phil Sims from Jiu Jitsu said that one time. He asked the question, he's like, what is it about Jiu Jitsu? Why do you think it brings people together? I think it's got to be something about that. I think it's like when you know someone could actually hurt you bad, but yet they don't. It's a good sign of character. It's a great sign that you know, like Jordan Peterson said, you can have the capacity to kill someone, but you choose not to, and that's what helps make you a decent person. Is it the capacity to do it and yet control it?
That's a good way to put it.
I think so.
Although I've met some wily white belts over the
Listen, I was one of them. I was a little arsehole for years, and I was put in my place properly multiple times. Thank you for all of those people that did that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm always trying to sell jiu-jitsu to people because I'm like yourself.
Yeah.
Obviously, I started many years later than you, but I'm just obsessed. It's just like such a. For me, it's super difficult because it's not only technical, but it's physically grueling, and
it is.
It's funny to see someone new come in, and I find there were some MMA guys that came in, and they're used to getting punched in the face and they're used to dealing damage, but there's a different mindset to kickboxing and stand up. But when 130-pound woman chokes him out with her legs, you never see him again.
It's too bad.
They can't reach that humble place. I feel because jiu-jitsu and martial arts, it's you on someone else. You're not part of a team. But jiu-jitsu is so much different than kickboxing and stand-up because you get the chance to learn with people and to trust them. And in the other one, you're just trying to survive or knock somebody out. It's
that's right. On paper, jiu-jitsu is a little bit more safe.
Yeah.
On paper. It doesn't always translate in the real world, but mostly. Mostly. Yeah. And it's yeah, I think Tyson Drake, he's one of the guys in JITS. Brilliant guy. He said, leave your ego at the door, because if you don't, you'll be leaving with exactly what you came in with. Nothing. And I was like, I had like one of those moments. I'm like, yeah, okay. Right? Oh man, and it's true. But that was really hard for me, right? Because back then I was very insecure. You know, a lot of fear of judgment. Very worried about failure. A fear of failure was a great motivator for me for years. That's why I got good, because I didn't want to fail. Now, looking back at that, it was successful, but it would have been much more productive to just try to be better, right? But I got there. I figured it out. But I think sometimes people are probably judging themselves too harshly, and they can't process the failure because their insecurity and their ego perhaps gets in the way of the bigger picture of learning, right? It's a hard concept for people that don't have a lot of confidence to learn the concept of learning by failure, because that word failure is so potent and it runs so deeply into their psyche, it scares them, I think. We need a psychologist here. I'm just trying to figure this out.
No, I mean, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, but if you can have the courage, because courage doesn't mean that you don't feel scared. It means that you still do the right thing even though you're scared, right? So I tried to have some courage when I was doing it, and I made it through, and I learned a lot, and it was good for me, and it continues to be good for me. I love jiu-jitsu, right? I love the people. I didn't realize this, but I think I was going there to learn self-defense and to stay in shape. But I didn't realize, though, that I was also there because I love the camaraderie. I didn't realize that, right? Until that damn COVID struck and we couldn't get in there. And then I realized, man, I just like banging around with the fellas and the girls, too. It's just kind of fun. We're social animals. Maybe that's another reason why people like jits, too, or sports in general. Maybe it's the people. We're socializing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it's true. It's you go in and you struggle together,
yeah.
and you learn together, and
yeah.
you all have these 5-minute rounds that are grueling. It builds tight bonds quickly.
I think it does, yeah.
Yeah,
I think it does.
And I also find that you get a broad spectrum of people that come,
mm-hmm.
but everybody that I've met is very loose and easy to talk to.
Yeah.
That sticks around.
That sticks around, yeah. And I hope they do. I always hope that the new folks that come in stick around, and we all give them 100%. Because you got to pay it forwards, right?
Yeah.
There are a lot of good, kind individuals that kind of help me through jits, throughout the years. So then I get my opportunity to be able to do that. And I think a lot of that happens at brown belt levels, too. It's not like there's still a big leap between brown and black, but I think at the brown belt level, you're kind of polishing your tools now, right? You're kind of polishing them. But for me, I think being at that particular level too, I feel it's a place where I want to be able to give back and to be a better teacher and communicator too. I think that's a big part of being up in the higher level belts. It's not just now about being the best. It's about rising the other ships too, right?
I like that.
Yeah.
You mentioned about when you first joined. We all carry things, especially from our childhood, and things that kind of, unless you know it's there or you really pay it mind, it can ruin parts of your life. Sometimes it helps people if they're, and sometimes it holds people back.
Yeah.
Did you find that a therapeutic approach to ridding yourself of that in jiu-jitsu? Or I know you eat healthy and you work out.
Mm-hmm.
Is there, what I'm asking is if there are people out there that are struggling with, their image of themselves, there's a lot of depression and anxiety going out there.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything you could recommend for them to help?
depression and anxiety, probably the things about starting with good sleep and considering some of those basic nutrition things. I'd also like to say that for me, you know, part of recovery too, if we want to put this under that category, it's socialization. We need to be around people, right? So whether that's JITS or whether that's a dart club, I don't care. You know, we always got to be mindful of our biases when we're talking about jiu-jitsu. We happen to love it, right?
Yeah.
But really anything. It's anything. Anything where you're banging around with other people. Doesn't matter what it is. I think you need to do that. I think you really need to. And I wanted to circle back to something else too about having a mission. 𝐦𝐨𝐫𝐞 is a retired Navy SEAL commander, as you know, right? And he said one thing that he thinks would help a lot of, in his case, vets. That's the lens that he sees this through, right? But we can apply this to anyone that's suffering from depression. Is you got to find a new mission. That's how he would say it, right? A purpose. What's your mission, right? Get a mission. And I think when you do that, you're going to have an opportunity to introduce some kind of low-level struggle that I think we all need to give us something to focus on. I think when people are sitting down by themselves and they are totally cut off and they're not eating well and they're not sleeping, all that stuff, I think it's a perfect storm to go deeper and deeper and deeper into depression and other forms of disease. Getting around other people and having something to do is part of getting out of that hole. Right? A lot of people that are depressed tend to be by themselves, so perhaps part of getting out of that is getting around other people in some capacity. And in our case, I think JITS can be good for those people too. We gotta promote JITS, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Exactly.
But no, I think you're completely right.
Yeah.
The struggle is important.
It is. I'll say this though too. If you're keen enough, if you can sense a new person coming into, like in our case, JITS, or really any sport, if you sense that they're a little timid and they're a little depressed, I think it's good to keep the volume down when you're rolling with them. Don't be going hard on beginners to show how wonderful you are. Go easy. Meet them where they are. Meet them where they are. That's such an important term. Meet them where they are. Get to know them. Develop relationships. Investors group. I'm serious. Develop relationships. Learn, ask questions, learn a little bit about them. Help them open up. Make them feel safe, for God's sakes, right? Make them feel respected and dignified. Roll with them a little bit, right? And just let them get little wins. Let them know that it's an environment where they're going to be okay. I think little stuff like that matters. But you can't know that unless you talk to them. Get to know your teammates.
Solid advice. When you mentioned about people staying inside their own head, especially there's a lot of people out there, I found after the pandemic, a lot of people started working from home. They don't really have anybody. They're still at home. They work from home. They were playing video games. And there is something about introspection which is helpful, but continuous loneliness is definitely a cancer for people's mental health.
Yeah, that's a good term.
So getting out there and doing something socially.
That's important.
Yeah, it definitely makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, we're not polar bears. We're not just kind of like mostly on our own.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be. Right? Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
I have to say, something I've noticed about my wife is that women had this like ability to socialize so easy with each other. Their friend group talks a lot about how they feel. And they want to help each other, and it's innate. And I find with guys, it's like, no one wants to sound corny, and no one wants to be, I'll say, vulnerable, but even like to talk about how you're feeling about something, Yeah,
you can still, you're right. They help each other a lot more, and they talk a lot more. There's less ego, I think. That's my sense. They're willing to get help faster before us. I think we're kind of taught to shut your mouth and bury your feelings, and maybe there's a time and place for that from time to time. If you're falling apart inside, keeping it quiet is not going to solve it.
No.
It can't, right? Yeah, it's important to talk. And talk to your friends, talk to a professional, and try to work out the bugs that are bothering you and that are holding you back, right? And keeping stuff bottled inside is really a bad idea. I listen to a lot of podcasts with veterans. I'm fascinated by them.
Me as well. Yeah.
I love it. I absolutely love it because they see and do some really hard stuff. And for God's sakes, if they can get over it, then I hope we can too. But, you can still be tough, and you can still be strong, and you can still be masculine, and you can still explore your emotions. It's okay. We have them. It doesn't mean that we need to be talking about all the time, constantly, because I don't know if that's actually a good thing either.
No.
For anyone. I'm not an expert on this, but I think you need to explore it as much as you can and as deeply as necessary, but then move on, because then I think you're just keeping the wound open. I'm willing to listen to therapists too, and to hear their feedback on that, right? But I think sometimes there was this girl that was on a podcast. I think she was a journalist, but she was talking about therapy. It's like, maybe sometimes there can be too much therapy. Should it go on forever and decades? Or maybe you just need to take those skills now and move on? Because it's almost like you're picking a scab. Maybe she's right. Maybe she,
It's funny you mention her. I think her name is Eliza Schreier.
Is it?
I read her book
me
over the
more.
summer, and the issue with therapy, from her perspective,
Yeah.
is that if you're constantly looking for something wrong, you'll find it. So, for me personally, I mean, we all feel, we're all humans, but I feel a lot of anxiety sometimes, and it builds up to a pressure valve, and then it blows. You know what I mean? So, relieving that pressure for me is being like, this thing bothers me, or, I got to go for a run to clear my head, or whatever.
Yep.
But if you're going somewhere and you're sitting down and talking about your problems, and you run out of problems, and you still got this appointment, I'm grossly summarizing her book. It's a lot deeper than that.
Yeah.
But I think that especially with young people, there are kids out there with real issues, and there's some kids that their parents are sending them to place because they don't want to talk. You know what I mean?
Boy.
So, talking to your kids is important. And I feel like because of our generation, we're making up for, you grow up, you don't really talk about your feelings.
Yeah.
And if you do, it's very surface level.
Yeah, that's right.
And I know my kids spill their guts, and that's great. And, we don't say anything to make them not want to do that. And that's the way I hope it always is. But if your kids have things that you can perceive and put in the boxes, anxiety, ADHD, and you're sending them to someone that doesn't really know them, and then they can start checking boxes, well, now you're creating a problem for this child that there's no reason to have an issue. There's no reason for the prescriptions.
Yeah.
Just go out and live.
Go out and live, yeah.
Yeah.
I've got some friends, man, they're so magical with their kids. I'll leave their names out of this. But there's just one person I know, man, she's a single mom, and her children are so precocious for their age. They're so ahead of their time. It's like they're this tall, and they might as well be fully grown adults the way they speak. They're very clear. They let me know exactly how they feel. They can clarify problems that they have and work them through. And it's because she's teaching them how to do it. She's giving them emotional maturity. It is incredible. She's incredible. She really is. And maybe it's because maybe her upbringing was a little not so good. But in her case, I think instead of passing on that trauma and pain, she did deep exploration and she tried to become a better person. And now she's giving it to the next generation. Instead of pain, she's giving solutions. It's beautiful. It's incredible. I love watching that. But you know, I want to hope that all of our parents did the best they could. Right? You know, and no one's perfect, but maybe, hopefully, and I'm not a parent, right? But I'm just watching my friends that are. It looks like they're just trying to learn from their past and try to make the next generation just a little bit better.
Yeah.
Right?
We're all
Seems that
the
way.
summary of a long line of our parents were children.
Yep.
Their parents were children. And it gets a little better, I think, each generation. But whatever trauma they had
Yep.
was probably not dealt with, you know, and that
Yeah.
followed and that followed. So, yeah, I think you're right. People are doing the best they can,
I think so.
you know.
I think so. I hope so.
Well, thank you so much for coming on.
My
It was a
sir.
pleasure to talk to you. Yeah.
It was a good time. Thank you. Thank you for having me.